Well, I finished up all the artwork for the Trepo Overview. I'll go ahead and show you those three sections real quick. And then maybe I'll talk about RootStack. I don't know, there's not really that much to talk about. Nothing really stupendous that occurred. But anyway, on to the Trepo Overview. So I went through and fleshed out the what we want aspects. You know, we have open source. I want it versioned. I want to allow public and private to be able to collaborate and things like that. I want to allow disagreements. You know, I want it to be able to be distributed. I want it to be cross-platform. I want it to be extensible. You know, I want it to be scalable and performant. So as traffic goes up, cost goes up linearly, and as traffic goes up, performance stays the same, you know, at the level we want. So we talked about property graph last time. vGraph, all I have is the UID labels, repos and boundaries, and versioning, and that's it. I may want to do more, but it is an overview. I'm not sure. But so I have decap. So decap has three parts: a store, a server, and a client. And the decap store holds commits, lets you retrieve them. The server essentially has a simple REST API that allows access to one or more stores, and then the client, you know, communicates with the stores. A router is also something there, so you can say, okay, for a given commit, where do I send it, either locally or remotely? And then the read more, and then ptree. So you have two layers, a what and a why. So the what is kind of your current belief or view of what happened. A person was born, they got married, they died, they had events associated with them, they have information associated with them. It's the information itself. And then you have the why. It's the why do you believe this particular thing? You know, things like personas, sources, assertions, notes. Those are why you believe something happened. So your research process and your conclusions that you draw, the reasons behind those conclusions are at that why level, and then you have this what level. You know, for example, here's what a birth looks like in ptree. You know, you have three-person nodes, a date node, a place node, and a birth node itself with these relationships. You know, a marriage looks like this. You know, we talked a little bit about extensibility. What we can do is, because we have nodes and edges, we can add additional edges to our graph, such as bridesmaid and groomsman in a marriage. And it doesn't break anything. It doesn't break our model whatsoever. It's just an additional edge. If someone is asking for a marriage in a different system, they just won't see that information in their standard marriage, but it's still there and it's still versioned and comes across that way. So you also notice that everything's first class. I may reorder these slides, but we do that because we allow greater granularity in versioning, sharing, and referencing. So versioning, if you go back here, we can version just the addition of the date, and the date itself, when you stick it in there, is a node, addition, and a relation to the marriage. Or a spouse. You add a spouse, that's just, you add one edge. So that's the level of granularity. We don't have to keep track of this whole blob that is a marriage. We can track it finer than that. And that's because the tracking takes place at the vGraph level, not at the ptree level. The model does not care about versioning whatsoever. It doesn't care about it. It just runs on top of vGraph. You know, sharing. I can share itty bitty bits of the model. I can break it up. I can snip it into many pieces. And referencing. I can, because each node and edge has a unique identifier, I can reference that date completely unambiguously, and I do not have to reference that date in relation to the marriage. I say that marriage. I can reference the relationship between the person and the marriage. I can reference that edge, and I can say that thing. And it doesn't have to be in relation to the person or the marriage. It's the thing itself, which allows us a fine granularity when referencing things in our model, which is wonderful. It also allows more expressiveness when querying and searching. Because these are broken up and because they're first class, when we do queries and traversals, we can map and backtrack and follow edges, and it almost looks like plain English when you're speaking. You know, follow any spouse edges from a person to a marriage, and if the marriage is between this place, go to the other spouse that we haven't seen, or if it's between this date and this date, don't do anything, just stop the traversal. And then when you go to a marriage, then you can do this and this, etc., etc. It also allows greater flexibility when adding custom extensions. So if you're looking at these bridesmaid and groomsmen, we can add those in and attach them to the marriage. We could actually add additional information to the marriage place itself, or in some other models that may have more conclusion pieces, we can poke in at any location with an edge, and it doesn't break anything, and we just namespace it correctly, and we don't care. So, and then we have Y connectors. Yeah, I think in my head, I figured out which order I want to do this in. So Y's connect the what to the Y. And then we have which Y. So there are many ways of doing research. P-tree needs to support them all. So if we namespace correctly, such as we have, notes, the note Y, it looks like this, persona Y's look like this, source Y's look like this, etc., etc. We can allow multiple research methodologies to exist simultaneously and all be versioned and all be referenced and be able to share our beliefs based off of that globally. And then when you dive into the why, it's in the original researcher's form. And again, you can read more. And I think that was it. So I think what I'm going to do is say P-tree, and I'm going to skip right to, here's a birth event, here's a marriage event, here's this, why is everything first class, and then talk about what's versus whys. I'm going to kick that one down, and that'll be it. I don't know, most of the time I spent going back to Roots Tech was just walking the floor, talking to people. Again, I wish this were out there so that people could build on something and not have to reinvent the back end every single time. So, but it is what it is. So keep on chugging away and doing what I can. Tomorrow I have some meetings out of town. Probably still get to work in the morning, but won't be a full day. And the other thing I would say is creating these takes time. Doing all these, even though they look simple, it's just you got to figure out, how are you going to lay it out? What are you going to do? How are you going to map it? Etc., etc. But it's good. Well, take care.